مرحبا وأهلا وسهلا فيكم بحلقة جديدة في Science at One. أنا John.
And I'm Mark, but John, I didn't quite catch that.
Oh, that was our usual intro, but in Arabic. Anyways, let's just rewind and hit it from the beginning. Hello everyone, it's 1 o'clock here on IC Radio, and that means it's time for Science at 1. I'm your host John.
And I'm Mark. Good afternoon everybody, and welcome back to the show where we bring you the latest science news, analysis, facts, events and more.
I think you might have guessed what the theme of today's show is. It's international, which means that our songs are going international as well.
Really excited to hear what they will be. Coming up on the show today, we'll find out about the psychology of language, and can some people really talk to the dead?
Well, I'll tell you more about this in a bit. We are also having Anjana with us today to tell us more about her experience with languages. And of course, we'll have our fans' favorite segment, the Sound Round.
All sounds incredible. That and more coming up on Science at 1.
So before we get into it, let's start with a song in Arabic by Palestinian artist Bashar Murad. That's Shillet Hamal.
بطارية والأكترية بدون هوية ما في أمان الوضع تعبان آخر الزمان تعبان الواضح إنه فيش أمل جماعة ماشية على الهبل وعند الأغلبية ما في أولوية والأكترية شلة همل شلة همل شلة همل لا في مصاري ولا راحة بال ماشي لحالي ضايع من زمان لا في مصاري ولا راحة بال ماشي لحالي ضايع من زمان الواضح انه فيش امل جماعة ماشية على الهبل وعند الاغلبية ما في اولوية والاكترية شلة همل شلة همل خلصت السهرة طفت الموسيقى وصلت الفاتورة شو الحل خربت السيارة وعم بتشتي حجارة وإذا بيجي بكرة شو ضل الواضح إنه ما فيش أمل جماعة ماشية على الهبل وعند الأغلبية ما في أولوية والأكترية شلة همل وعند الأغلبية ما في مسؤولية والبقية شلة همل شلة همل شلة همل شلة همل شلة همل شلة همل.
That was Shillet Hamal by Bashar Murad. And now we're moving on to some Imperial news. And to celebrate the international spirit, I have some good news today.
Can't wait to hear it.
Imperial College has been recently awarded a bronze status for its efforts to improve the representation of minority ethnic groups and for addressing racial inequality. And that includes students as well as staff. This award was granted by the Race Equality Charter of Advanced HE, which provides a framework for universities to self-assess and identify institutional and cultural barriers for minority ethnic groups. Member institutions then develop initiatives and solutions to ensure equal representation and to tackle racial inequality. Imperial became a member of Advanced HE in 2018, and since then the college is making sure to fulfill its commitments towards minority ethnic groups, and seems like it's going really well, so keep up the good work, Imperial.
Yeah, honestly, great to hear. Now, our listeners have heard of Cloud9, but here at Science at One, we always like to go one step further. We're going to take you to Planet 9.
Ooh.
A leading Imperial astronomer believes he's found possible evidence of a ninth planet in the solar system. So, Michael Rowan Robinson believes that this world would be 3 to 5 times more massive than the Earth and orbit the Sun at about 225 times the distance of our own planet. So, quite out there. Now, he has a device called the Infrared Astronomical Satellite, or IRAS, and this was launched in 1983, so quite a while ago, and it was the first orbiting observatory to look at the entire night sky in infrared. Now, they use heat to basically detect differences in the background of the very cold environment of space around them. Mm-hmm. So, because of this, it can sometimes detect things that are just floating debris. So Michael does admit that the observations are not perfect, as they are made in a region of sky full of galactic gas known as cirrus. So a more comprehensive study is needed. However, it is possible that it's in the orbit just past Pluto. So it's a little rude to Pluto. We take away its planetary status and its neighbor gets one.
Well, sorry, Pluto, and that was really interesting. I think we're going to move on to some news beyond Imperial, and it's quite creepy, to be honest.
Okay.
According to a recent study by psychologists at Northumbria University in the field of spiritual psychology, people with certain traits may be more likely to claim they hear the voices of the dead. What was found in the study is that there are 3 traits that people with disability have that people with disability have in common. The first trait is tendency to high levels of absorption in tasks, which means that these people tend to get very absorbed into the task they're doing to the point that they can kind of tune out of the world surrounding them. Absorption also includes very intense levels of imagination, imagery, and fantasy, which can somehow explain their ability to hear sounds that we can describe as out of this world. Another trait goes back to childhood, where these people go through unusual auditory experiences, such as hearing voices of their imaginary friends, which also connects to a tendency to auditory hallucinations later on in life. So what they did to carry out a comparison that led to this finding is that they recruited participants that self-identify as clairaudient mediums. Now you might be asking, what is a clairaudient
Yeah, I've never heard
medium?
of that before.
Well, clairaudient means it's the power to hear sounds that are beyond the physical world.
Spooky.
And they compared them to participants that do not have disability or do not self-identify as clairaudients. Mm-hmm. And what they found was that the majority of clairaudient participants had the traits that we talked about earlier, as opposed to a small number of the non-clairaudient participants that had these traits. What's more interesting is that clairaudient people are said to have the ability to control these metaphysical experiences and usually report them as positive experiences. So when they listen and speak to the dead, it's kind of like an enjoyable activity for them.
And they can switch it on and off. That's crazy.
Exactly. This is the opposite of people with schizophrenia, for example, where one of the most prominent symptoms is hallucinations and hearing things that do not exist. And these are mostly out of their control and are reported to be disturbing experiences. So the findings of the study are actually opening up new possible streams of studies that will be able to work out the source of these disturbing hallucinations in people with schizophrenia and hopefully be able to eliminate them one day.
Yeah, sounds like fantastic news, even if it came from a bit of a creepy background.
Right?
Okay, so now we are going on to an interview with our very special guest. So thank you for joining us, Anjana.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for having me. And there's John. I would say hi to John as well.
Hey, Anjana. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, no, we're very, very excited to have you here in the studio.
Thank you.
So, Angela, I'm told that you know quite a few languages. So, how many languages do you speak?
I am conversational in 6 languages.
Wow.
Yeah, 4 of them being, regional languages of India from my native, and 2 of them being English and just beginner level French, I would say.
Wow, that's very, very impressive. How did you manage to learn all these languages?
I think growing up in India has its perks, I'd say. India has a lot of languages and 22 official languages, and there are more than 1,500 dialects. So if you grow up in India and if you move a lot, you are meant to, pick the languages. It just becomes easy. So I think, my location is what one of the advantages is in learning these languages.
Yep. That's really interesting. So what tips do you have for our listeners on learning a new language?
Oh, I think next time if you pick a movie, do not watch it with subtitles. Watch your movies without subtitles, because that entertainment is the biggest source of language learning technique. So do that. Other than that is, mainly travel and exploring places. That is also like an advantage for you.
Okay. What film would you recommend we watch?
A film?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I'd say there are a couple of popular Hindi movies. I know like Slumdog Millionaire is what, people recognize because it won the Oscar.
Yeah.
But there are some really good movies, and yeah, I can give you a list very soon.
Yes,
I'd do
definitely, please. So, Angela, is there any word or phrase in English that you think just sounds absolutely ridiculous?
Oh my God, English is a funny language, I have to tell you. Ridiculous won't be the correct word, but let me just give you like an example. For example, you would say that there's a lone mouse and a house full of mice, but the plural of house becomes houses and not highs.
Yeah, no,
you know what
that's
I
a good
mean?
point.
So it's like phrases of, let's not even start there, but just words and pronunciations, I don't understand. It's a very funny language.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely a strange one.
So your native language is Hindi, right?
No, my native language is Malayalam. Hindi
Okay.
is the language I speak, where I'm brought up, basically.
Yeah.
So, but yes, it is Hindi. I speak Hindi very well.
Yeah. So can you tell us a bit more about the difference between your native language and Hindi?
So I come from South India. That language is very difficult. For example, if I say John Anduarinu, can you
was that?
can you break that down? So that means John, how are you? And in
Okay.
Hindi it becomes John, kaise ho? So there is no similarity
That was
between
that was very different.
yeah. So there's no similarity between what language I speak and what language is basically one of the most national language of India, which is Hindi. So it's very different. The dialect is different. The pronunciation is different. Also, you would be surprised to know that if there is one alphabet, which is K, we have 5 different sounds of K.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I'm going to touch upon that later on in the show. We're going to talk
Yeah.
about the psychology of language and the developmental aspect of it. Can you say the 5 versions of it?
Yeah, so it goes like k, k, g, g, g.
okay.
It's all K. It's all, the roots of all these 5 are K, but you do not say K. It becomes K, then it becomes K, which is from the epiglottis. So
Okay.
yeah, so there are 5 versions of the same alphabet,
Well,
basically.
I can actually relate to that because my native language is Arabic,
Oh, yeah,
and we
right.
have certain letters where we have the soft version of the letter, and then we have the throaty version of the letter.
Yeah.
I can give an example about the S. So we have the S, which is the soft one, and then we have the S, which comes from a bit deeper into your throat.
Right into the throat, right?
Yeah.
So like
And we have a lot of these. I think Arabic is a very throaty language. So like we have a lot of and can you say any of these?
Okay, give me them again and I'll try.
Can you say
Ugh.
No,
Nope, not at all.
maybe Anjana can do it.
Yeah, go again.
Ah,
Ha.
ah.
No, I can't do that.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. But that was really interesting. We're going to touch more about on that later on in the show. So thank you, Anjana. It was really
Thank
lovely to
you.
have
Thank
you
you
with
so
us.
much, John.
What about you take us to the next track in Hindi?
Yeah, so we'll go to this track called as Meri Sanam, which is, I think, it's a decently old track, but it's a very good song. It's a very soothing song. So let's get you guys hearing one of the Hindi songs that we have picked for you.
की तो बात न जाने है, सपनों के रास्तों रहना जाने है, दिल की बातें धड़कन जाने है, जिस पे गुजरी वो तन जाने है। हम दीवाने हो गए हैं आपके, हम तो बस इतना जाने हैं। तू मेरा है सनम, तू ही मेरा हमदम, तेरे संग जीना अब सातों जन्म। तू मेरा है सनम, तू ही मेरा हमदम, तेरे संग जीना अब सातों जन्म। नजरें ये आपकी करने लगी होशियारियां, कहीं कर देना ये मेरे लिए दुश्वारियां। नजरें ये आपकी करने लगी होशियारियां, कहीं कर देना ये मेरे लिए दुश्वारियां। हुस्न की बात तो हुस्न ही जाने है, रूप के नाज तो रूप ही जाने है, सही गलत तो दर्पण जाने है, जिस पे गुजरी वो तन जाने है। हम दीवाने हो गए हैं आपके, हम तो बस इतना जाने हैं। तू मेरा है सनम, तू ही मेरा हमदम, तेरे संग जीना अब सातों जन्म। तू मेरा है सनम, तू ही मेरा हमदम, तेरे संग जीना अब सातों जन्म। सूखे पत्तों की तरह थी मेरी ये जिंदगी, ओस की बूंदों के जैसे जब से मुझ पे तू गिरी। सूखे पत्तों की तरह थी मेरी ये जिंदगी।
So that was Meher Snam. It means my love in Hindi. A really, really lovely track.
Yep.
Now, we did just discuss with Anjana languages and, you know, being bilingual and stuff like that. Unfortunately now, I only speak one language. I am a very bad Irishman, unfortunately. But I do realise that I actually have another language that is universal. So, do you know what it might be, John?
Tell me about it.
So it is the language of mathematics. Now our theme today is international, as we know, there are thousands of languages across the globe. There's been many attempts to kind of unite these into one universal language, the most famous, of course, being Esperanto, which was a common language created by Polish ophthalmologist L.L. Zamenhof. And, you know, maybe at some point in our very ancient history, all humans spoke the same language. But, our world has gotten bigger. It's spread to all corners of the globe. So that is a long since past idea. But as I said, there's one language that's the same the world over. Maths. So math is the only language that's shared by all civilizations, regardless of culture, religion, gender. 2 + 2 always equals 4.
Yep.
No matter where you go, pi is always 3.14, etc.
Well, unless you're a philosopher, you might say 2 plus 2 equals 5.
Yeah, unfortunately, this is not philosophy 1. That's, I think, a later show. Now, in every culture, we use these principles of maths just to help us with our everyday life. Business, politics, all of these principles never change in these situations, no matter what part of the world you're in. So with this universal language, we can accomplish and have accomplished an insane amount of stuff. I can pick up my phone, search a recipe for cookies, for example, and have those cookies baked in a few moments. That phone runs on maths. That recipe based on maths. You know, the internet and the website that I got it from, entirely based on maths. Now, might be a weird example, you know, UK use one measurement system and America use another. So if I'm looking up an American recipe, might be getting it a little wrong. However, that's just a fluke in the system. It actually will always be equal. You know, 1 cup in America will always equal 225 grams here in the UK. It's never going to change. So even though I might not speak Hindi or Arabic, there's at least one language that we can all communicate in.
Yeah. Okay, can you imagine if we start speaking in numbers?
Yeah, look, maybe in the future we'll have a few robots that'll do that for us.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we can move on. That was really interesting, and I'm really glad that we share at least one universal language with everyone. Yeah, and now we're going to move to the fans' favorite segment, which is the sound round.
Okay, so we're actually, John, before then, I'm going to jump in here with a song for you from my hometown, okay? So, this is a song Oscailga, which means in Irish. It is a cover of Codaline and Love Will Set You Free. Take it away.
This time we'll to God for let the sail new book right. Yeah, what a gain when, yeah, what a gain when. Nu fick jag kryddet ut med en kasse in a night. Nu snillen out on, nu snillen out on. Egondera is too laughing, is too caution in sundown. Rudy's bowl a queen who will me on, Mararima Pinto on. All the bar on says your utter, gonna talk it is the east to ears. Lichten grow is shock to cream. Skulle det kun get chuck on tada out. Chuck with me on get in down gum. My fem with it all okay the simon quit out. You say him out gun still sugar gone wrong. It gone there right is too late. It's too caution in sundown. This bowl a queen who will me on Mararima Pinto on. All of more on sales your
And that was Love Will Set You Free by Codaline Oscailga in Irish. And it's really, really reminded me of home, John.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed it.
That was really a nice song. And I'm sorry, I got too excited for the sound round. And that's because it's my turn to choose the sound.
Your chance for revenge, eh?
And I'm calling it Sound Round the Revenge.
That means you're being mean.
So just to remind our listeners on how that goes, I chose a sound that Mark doesn't know what it is. Or maybe he knows. So we're going to see that. He's going to listen to the sound and tell us what he thinks it is. And if he doesn't get it, he's going to do a good imitation of the song by the end of the show.
Good is generous.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. What was that?
Oh my god. A gibbon? I don't know. A monkey? Like being electrocuted?
I think someone will get offended by the end of the show. Because that wasn't a gibbon or a monkey. But we're gonna find out by the end of the show.
Whoever that was, I apologize.
Well, you're apologizing to a celebrity, by the way. I'm just saying.
God. There's a bit of a hint.
So, next, I think before we go to our next part of the show, let's do some round of, let's learn some words in different languages about science.
Yeah, sounds good.
Should we start with the word science?
Sure. Sounds like a good place to start.
How do you say that in Irish?
So I'm going to use the Ulster dialect.
Okay.
Because there isn't much of a dialect in the area I'm from, because most people there speak English.
Okay.
So in science, it is eoliacht.
Say it again.
Eoliacht.
Eoliacht.
There you go. Nailed
Okay,
it.
that's nice. That's nice.
And in Arabic?
In Arabic, we say ulum.
Urlum.
Ulum.
Urlum.
Well, it has the throaty sound that I talked about
I'm not
earlier.
quite getting that.
So we also have a different like another word in Arabic that I think sounds interesting.
Okay.
It's for survey. We say istifta.
Istiftar.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Okay. Now the one in Irish for survey is very tricky. Okay, you ready? Survey.
That can you say it again?
Survey.
Survey.
Oh, nailed it.
Okay, that's good. What other words do you have for me?
So, what about research? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is pronounced taigd.
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 Yeah. Now quicker.
Okay. Taigd.
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 There you go.
Okay,
nailed
that's
it.
nice. Well, in Arabic, it's also a word that has one of these throaty letters in it, and it's called bahth.
Bah.
that was nice.
There's a little bit of a click in there that wasn't intentional, but
Should we go for one more?
sure thing. Yeah. How about discovery?
Yeah, we say iktishaf.
Iktishaf.
Yeah, that was
There
good. That
we
was a
go.
good one.
This one is actually a kind of tricky one in Irish. It's fionachtin.
Say that again.
Fionachtin.
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 Nailed it.
Okay,
Perfect.
that's nice.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to take it to the next track. This is a Spanish song, Port de Tas Janet.
Hoy en mi ventana brilla el sol y el corazón se pone triste contemplando la ciudad. ¿Por qué te vas? Como cada noche desperté pensando en ti y en mi reloj todas las horas vi pasar. ¿Por qué te vas? Todas las promesas de mi amor se irán contigo. Me olvidarás, me olvidarás. Junto a la estación no lloraré igual que un niño. ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas? Bajo la penumbra de un farol se dormirán todas las cosas que quedaron por decir. Se dormirán junto a las manillas de un reloj. Esperarán todas las horas que quedaron por vivir. Esperarán. promesas de mi amor se irán contigo. Me olvidarás, me olvidarás. Junto a la estación no lloraré igual que un niño. ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas? Todas las promesas de mi amor se irán contigo. Me olvidarás, me olvidarás. Junto a la estación no lloraré igual que un niño. ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas? Todas las promesas de mi amor se irán contigo. Me olvidarás, me olvidarás. Junto a la estación no lloraré igual que un niño. ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas? ¿Por qué te vas?
And that was Porque te Vas by Jeanette. And you are listening to Science at 1 with Mark Brown.
And I'm John.
Still to come on the show, we've got the latest news from COP26.
And as well, we have the big reveal for the sound round.
Yeah, not looking forward to it.
Do you want to listen to it one more
I
time?
want as many chances as I can
Okay,
get.
let's go for one more.
Yeah.
What is that?
Okay, you said it's a celebrity.
Yep.
Are they rolling down a hill while they're making this sound? Because
I
that's
don't
my
think
guess. It's
so.
a Benedict Cumberbatch running down a hill.
Well, it might be. We're going to find out by the end of the show.
Okay.
And now we're moving on to something that I really enjoy. And I studied psychology for my undergrad. And I'm really interested to talk to you more about the psychology behind language and the way we learn languages.
Looking forward to it.
Yep. I think one of my favorite topics in psychology was neuropsychology and developmental psychology, which both have to do with language. So let's start with basic neuroanatomy. We know that our brain has two sides of it. There's the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. And studies found that each side of our brain has a different function. They have to work together for us to function properly.
Okay.
But then each one of them has a different kind of role. So the left part of our brain is the analytical part, which makes sense of what we have, of what we have around us, what we hear, what we're gonna say next, and just like make sense of the world around us. Whereas the right part is more about social contexts and how you behave in social contexts and
Okay.
emotionally, physically. It's all about socials.
So that's the part we're using right now.
Well, actually, we're
Oh.
using the analytical part because to speak, you have to analyze.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So in our brain, on the left hemisphere, we have two regions that have to do with language. One of them is responsible for the production of language, of speech, and that's called the Broca's area.
Okay.
And
okay.
it's responsible, as I said, for speech production. And then we have a bit for, like, they're not right next to each other. They're kind of disconnected, but they
Okay.
have to work together. We have the Wernicke's area, which is responsible for speech comprehension. So if you want to make sense of how they work together, let's say I'm talking right now.
Yeah.
There's an area in your brain that's making sense of what I'm saying, and
Okay.
there's another area that's preparing what you want to say next.
Ah, that
So
makes sense. Okay.
That's why we have them on the left side, because we have to make sense of what we're listening in order to be able to say, like, to reply or to respond. And so, as I said, they're not in the same place, which means that if one of the regions gets damaged, the second one can function properly, which I
Okay.
think you can think of situations where you're listening to something but it doesn't make sense, but you can still reply. So that's one of the disorders that we have when you get damage to the Wernicke's region, which is you can't make sense of what you're listening to, but you want to just reply because you see someone moving their lips.
That's insane.
And that's such a frustrating disorder,
I
because
can imagine,
people
yeah.
with this disorder just say words that do not make any sense.
Oh, so they just blindly reply.
Yeah. So if you say something, they want to reply, they don't know what you just said, but their brain is telling them, just reply. They say any kind of words they come up with.
Oh my God.
That's very frustrating, and you can imagine the psychological impact.
Of course, yeah.
Whereas if the Broca's region got damaged, that's called expressive aphasia. Aphasia is a disorder with language and speech production. So when Broca gets damaged, you can't produce sound, you can't produce language, but you can still make sense. So that's less frustrating.
Because you can at least understand.
Yeah, you can at least understand, and you're not... Part of the frustration comes from the way people look at you when you're just like saying words that do not make any kind of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Broca, you're just listening, but sadly you can't reply because you're like some people, depending on the damage, some people can reply, but it's like really hard to produce speech. But some people just lose their speech at all. So if we go back, they both have to work in coordination in order for us to produce a proper speech. And now I would like to speak about how we learn language.
Okay.
So as we said, both regions, both hemispheres in our brain have to work together to produce language, because you have to make sense of the social context you're in, so that you will be able to produce language properly.
But you also need to analyze in order to understand.
Exactly. And the connection between these two hemispheres has led to the critical period theory, which, according to this theory, children find it easier to learn a new language and become fluent at it than adults. And that goes back to the plasticity of their developing brain. So they have more... If you learn a language when your brain is still developing, you have more associations between your left part and your right part, which makes sense that you can process language in different social contexts much easily than when you learn it as adult, where you just like process language on the left part of your brain. So that doesn't mean you can't learn a new language as an adult, but it's going to be harder for you. And what's more interesting is that in developmental psychology, studies found that we are born with the ability to distinguish between all 800 sounds that we have across all languages.
Wow.
So each language uses only around 40 sounds on average, but we are born to distinguish all 800 sounds. So babies are born with this ability, and if you think about it, that means babies can learn as many languages
Any
as
language
they can,
they want, of course.
up till the age of 6 months. So yeah, as I said, we are born to distinguish between all of these sounds, but the more we get exposed to one language, we just get used to these kind of sounds.
And we forget all the others.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a shame.
Which is so sad. And then I think we can wrap this up and go to our next song, which is an Italian song with a French title. It's called Tu me manques by French DJ.
Sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna, sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Sto ti mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Sto ti dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Mamma mia, dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca. Che calonna la discoteca, che calonna la discoteca, che calonna la discoteca, che calonna la discoteca. Ma che cos'è la mola, che calonna la discoteca. Dà la mamma mia, calonna la discoteca.
And that was Tu me manques by French DJ Kanzus. So, Mark, what do we have next?
Well, we were just talking about something from your background, psychology. Now, my background is actually in zoology, so the big headline for me these days is COP26.
Oh, yeah.
Now, COP26 just finished on the 13th of November, and it did have a few landmark changes that I'm very excited about. Now, do you know what COP26 actually stands for?
It has to do something with climate.
That's what I
Climate
thought
something,
too.
something.
It actually stands for the Conference of Parties 26. Really catchy. I think I prefer COP26.
Well, that was their only chance to include climate.
Exactly. They messed it up. So this is the fifth one since the original one in Paris back in the day. And it has the very lofty goal of keeping the 1.5 degrees Celsius alive. Now, that just means that basically we are trying to prevent the globe from warming up by 1.5 degrees. Doesn't sound like a lot, but scientists have predicted that it is going to have some very catastrophic effects in the next few years. And with a clear increase in like extreme weather events across the globe, the Australian bushfires, of course, back in Ireland, we've had major storms that's caused a lot of our native marine wildlife to wash up dead, unfortunately. So it's already starting, and scientists predict that we will hit that 1.5 increase by early 2030 if we continue at this rate.
Well, interestingly, I came across a study that just recently that found out that during the Cretaceous period, which is like 75 million years ago, the southern Antarctica was on fire. And what they found out is that during that period, the concentration of CO2 was higher than expected. So I don't know if we're going into a same period of like global warming, but it sounds like a recurring pattern.
Yeah, here's hoping that Antarctica doesn't catch fire anytime soon. So in an effort to prevent Antarctica from catching fire, we've had a few big items come out. So one of the biggest items is the decision to phase down the unabated use of coal and other fossil fuels, which previously was just unheard of. A lot of countries rely on coal for, a huge amount of their fuel. So the thought that they could actually bring that down is incredible. And it really just goes to show, especially post-COVID, that we can come together and make big things happen.
Actually, it's nice that they had a really nice hashtag called Together for Our Planet. So like, let's unite and do this.
Exactly. It really just sums up that this isn't just one country's problem. This is the world's problem. And that decision about the coal actually came right down to the wire, because at the last minute there was an attempt to rephrase the wording into slightly weaker, kind of easier to get around wording, but they held firm and we got the tougher wording through.
That's nice.
And 151 countries around the globe actually submitted newer updated plans to tackle climate change, including China, although they also came down to the wire, submitting only a few days before the actual event. Now, many countries have been encouraged to try and provide a much stronger set of rules and goals in future, which to me sounds like a bit of a cop-out. They're giving themselves a year to find a bit of a, workaround or an excuse, but let's hope that they actually stick to what they're saying. Now, it's not all good news, but, we're thankful that it went ahead at all, because with the cloud of COVID hanging over it, this year's COP was pushed back by a whole year. And in the last few months, there's been talks about it not going ahead at all. So it looked like it was going to be cancelled completely.
Yeah.
Some ministers and representatives didn't actually make it due to COVID, of course. Yeah. The Tuvalu foreign minister actually addressed COP26 while standing in water.
Wow.
So this was to highlight the, effect of global warming and rising sea levels. He actually made the point to say that the area he was standing in just a few years prior would have been completely dry, and only because
crazy.
Of global warming and rising ocean levels was he in water at all, which is obviously a particular issue for a small island nation like Tuvalu.
That's sad that he had to go all the way to demonstrate that in such a drastic way. But I think it's our time to just come together and hashtag together for our planet.
Hashtag together for our planet. Now, the next song coming up is... Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
trying to avoid...
You've been trying to avoid that,
I
but
am
I
trying to
think
avoid it.
I'm going to give you one more chance to listen to the sound that I chose for you. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have any new guesses?
I really wish I did. But I really just can't. I'm just picturing someone with their tongue out rolling down a hill again.
Yep. Well, there's no hill. There's a tongue out, but there's no hill.
Okay, there's a tongue out. I'm getting closer. It's a celebrity with their tongue out. I'm going to have to make this sound at the end, aren't I?
Well, I think you're going to do this by the end of the show, and I can't wait to hear that because it's going to be my revenge. And now we have Antonio. He's going to tell us some fun facts that he came across regarding language and idioms.
Hello, everyone.
Hello,
you two.
Antonio.
How are we doing today? Thank
Welcome
you
to
for
the
today's
studio.
show. Yeah, this has been really interesting. I've really liked hearing a bit about you both and your history with languages in your respective heritages. It's been
So
really
what
interesting.
have you got for us? You've heard all about us. What have you got for us?
Well, I thought I'd start off with sharing a little bit about myself and my history with language. As you can tell, my name, Antonio, kind of gives it away. I'm from Italian heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And languages in Italy have a really weird history leading to how they are today, which is also just as weird.
Mm-hmm.
Because Italy, little known fact, has 28 languages.
I
Wow.
did not know that.
28, yes. It's not just Italian. They're often called dialects, but that's actually not correct. They are independent languages and are recognised. They're different enough to be classed as languages.
So one wouldn't understand the other?
Exactly. So with me, I grew up in Naples. Well, I didn't grow up in Naples, but I'm an immigrant from Naples. Grew up in London, which is why my accent is not as exotic as I'd like it to be.
Can you try to do an Italian accent?
Oh, well, of course I can do Italian
Oh, that's
accent.
nice.
It's easy, everything.
Spot on.
And yes, but so I speak a bit of Napolitan or Neapolitan is
Ooh.
what you'd call it in English.
Mm-hmm.
But that means when I was in year 9 going to school just in Putney, they were like, okay, well, we'll enter you to the Italian GCSE. You can just get an extra GCSE. You speak Italian, right? I'm like, yeah, I speak Italian. Of course I do. Went to sit the Italian GCSE, and of course, that is all the formal, recognised Italian language. I answered it with my Neapolitan truncated verbs and everything like that. And I flat out failed.
So is it that different?
So it's that different. It's that
Wow.
different. Didn't even get a C or anything like that. It's so
Oh,
different. They were like, this is not Italian, unrecognised. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
So do you have an example of how like words are different between your accent and the other dialects, for example?
So one of the obvious things is tutto a posto in Italian is everything good? Everything good? You
Mhm.
alright? And in Napolitan just becomes da post, as short as that. It's very so
That
it's a
was
lot of
different.
Okay,
with
very different.
Neapolitan, it's truncation. It's really heavily just smushed together to the point where they're just different words entirely. And if you try and write that down, you're not anywhere close.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking now that I think I can relate to that because I speak Arabic as my mother tongue. Let's
yeah.
start with the fact that in Palestine we have many, many dialects, to the fact that people can tell which like region within the city you come from.
Oh, wow.
I'm a Christian Palestinian, and we have a very like unique accent that's kind of like a mix between Palestinian and Lebanese. So people can tell that, okay, he's Christian. Not in a bad way, but like he's Christian.
Wow.
Just in the dialect.
And also thinking about it, it's like we have this. I speak Arabic, but different Arab countries speak Arabic with a very different dialect, which means that some of them I can't even understand. It's like listening to gibberish Arabic. So do you have any fun facts, Antonio? that
Of
you can
course.
share with
You
us?
know I'm full of fun facts, okay? I've got them in abundance. So my first fun fact, and this one is really fun. In fact, you might be able to answer this one for me. Do you know what the most common letter in the English language is out of our 26?
I think it's the R.
It's not the R. It's not the R. It's obviously a vowel.
Yeah,
Come
I
on,
would've
let's be
guessed
reasonable.
E.
It is E. E
Ooh,
is the most
yeah.
commonly used letter in the English language.
There you go.
In 11% of all words in the English
Wow,
vocab.
that's a lot.
Yeah, 1 in 10.
And yeah, another little fact for you, is that there are more people in the world who have learned English as their second language than there are native speakers of any language in the world.
Okay, that's
Oh my God.
interesting. So that might be the universal language after maths.
Yeah, maybe.
Exactly.
It's getting close anyway.
Yeah, wow. So, before I give you a third fun fact, I want to know if you've got anything for me. So, other than facts, my other big passion is sayings and idioms, okay? So, in English, we have a lot of weird ones. We have kind of like, if you do something at the drop of a hat. Do you know what that one means?
Drop of the hat. As soon as possible?
As soon as possible, exactly right. Or if you say something costs an arm and a leg.
Really expensive.
Exactly, really expensive. So I was wondering, in your respective languages, have you got any weird creative idioms?
The best one in Ireland that I think everyone's found is "What's the crack?" It basically means "What's the fun?", which doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just a combination of Irish and English. And speaking of crack, this song is pretty solid crack. It is a Mandarin song called "The Wind Is Rising" by Wu Chung Fong.
Nice.
Here it comes, I'm sure.
It's coming up just in a sec.
It's worth the wait.
Here we go, worth the wait.
也曾指尖弹出盛夏，心之所动，且就随缘。这一路上走走停停，顺着少年漂流的痕迹，迈出车站的前一刻，竟有些犹豫。不禁笑着，景象亲切，人无可避免。而长夜的天依旧那么暖，风吹起了从前。从前初识这世界，万般流连。看着天面似在眼前，也甘愿赴汤蹈火去走它一遍。如今走过这世界，万般流连，翻过岁月不同侧脸，猝不及防闯入你的笑颜。我怎能自拔于世界之大，也沉溺于其中梦话，不可真假，不做挣扎，不去消化。我曾将青春翻涌成她，也曾指尖弹出盛夏，心之所动，且就随缘去吧。逆着光行走，任风吹雨打。从前初识这世界，万般流连，看着天边似在眼前，也甘愿赴汤蹈火去走它一遍。如今走过这世界，万般流连，翻过岁月。
And that was The Wind is Rising by Wu Ching Feng. Now it's time for the moment Mark has been dreading all along.
Really not looking forward
And
to
it's
this.
the reveal of the sound round. Do you want to have one more listen before we go?
I might. I'm getting close. I'm getting close.
Okay, well, I think it's time for you to start practicing the sound as well. So let's hear the sound again. Okay, final guess.
Oh my god, I can't believe you've done this to me. Okay, so it's a celebrity with their tongue out, but a gibbon is insulting. I still think it's Benedict Cumberbatch. And that just sounds like something that would come from his head.
Well, it's not. I will reveal this. It's
Okay.
Shakira from the halftime show of the Super Bowl.
Oh my
Do you remember that moment that went viral and it was a meme? So that thing that she did is part of the Arab culture, and it's an
Okay.
Arab tradition. Women do this when they're happy, not like on a daily basis, but let's say in formal ceremonies like weddings.
Okay.
Once the ceremony is over, women do this, and that's kind of an expression of joy and happiness. So I think it's the time that you want to show us some joy and happiness.
Joy and happiness. Okay, I feel like I need to get ready for this. Okay, you ready?
Yeah. That was good. That was good. I like
I think
that.
it was a little louder in the intro, but
So thank you. That was really good.
So is that kind of only at like a wedding, or what kind of situation would you do that in?
Well, nowadays they just do it whenever, like during weddings. It's part of the Arab culture across many countries.
Okay.
They have different variations of it in every country, but you can just do it whenever you're happy. But people are gonna look at you in a weird way.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it on the bus when
Nope.
you get invited on a date or something.
Exactly.
Of course, and it's only women that do this.
Yeah.
Is there like a male equivalent?
The males just be dancing.
Just dance. Okay.
Yep.
So the women are making the noise while the men dance.
Exactly.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, so this has been Science at 1. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. My name is Mark.
And I'm John. Thank you for listening.
And see you next time.